Hello everyone, this is Andrew Epperson. I am the guy who knits behind the Guy Who Knits Designs, and today I'm going to be talking about steeking. And what steeking is basically turning one piece of fabric into two different pieces of fabric by sewing a seam, or in this case, crocheting a seam. The materials you will need is a swatch, a crochet hook, some scrap yarn, and some scissors. Alright, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So for this video, we are going to be talking about using a crocheted steek. So what we're going to be doing is working with our rows of knit stitches, which is symbolized by these V's right here. And we're going to be taking the the left leg of one column and crocheting it to the right leg of another. So essentially just crocheting these two together, and you're going to do that all the way up, attaching these two rows together. Okay, and then when you get to the top, you'll turn it over and then you'll crochet the remaining half of this column to this half of the this next column, crocheting those two together, keeping in mind that you're crocheting two half columns together the entire time. And then once you've done that, work up that way, come out this way, and then when you're on this end, you head that way. Just like that. And then once you've crocheted these seams together, you will then separate this column and then cut right down the middle of it. And that will give you your steek. So let's see what that looks like. So I have my swatch here, and when we're doing our steeking, we're looking at these columns right here. See how we have these V's right here? We're going to be working in this half of the stitch, this leg right here. So you'll go directly into the middle of your stitch, okay? So what we want to do is we want to take some scrap yarn, make a slip knot, okay, and then we want to chain a few stitches. Okay, and then we will go to our swatch and attach it to our cast on edge. And you'll just do this by slipping those two stitches together. Okay, now I've attached it to my cast on edge. That is the first step to the steeking process. Okay, now that we have attached our chain to the cast on edge of our stitches, we want to go ahead and look where we're going to be crocheting our steek seam. So we have this row of this column of knit stitches right here. And then right next to it we have another column. We are going to be looking at the left half of this column, go in that stitch, and we're going to be looking at the right half of this column, so this one right here. And what we're going to do, we're going to take our swatch, take our crochet hook here, go into the left side of that knit stitch and into the right side of that knit stitch and crochet it together. Just slip it through. And you'll want to do that the entire way up. So again, looking at the left half of this column and the right half of this column. Go in to the left half of this stitch and the right half of the next column. Yarn over and pull it through. And you'll want to do that the entire way up your swatch. Okay, we are nearing the end of our swatch here with our Steek seam. And I went ahead and color coded these columns so it makes it easier to see what we're working with here. Again, we're working with the left half of this blue column and the right half of the orange column. You are going to go into the middle of the stitch of the blue column, come up the middle of the stitch in the orange column, and so you've got the left half of the blue column and the right half of the orange column on your hook, and you're going to slip stitch those together. And that's how you'll set your seam the entire way up. Okay, now I've done my crochet seam all the way up, and it should look like this. Should look like you've added in a new row of stitches in between a column. And then once you get all the way up to the top, you want to fasten off your crochet seam to the bind off edge. Just slip it together like you did on the cast on edge. Add a couple of chains. And cut that. All right, and that is one seam done. Now we're going to attach the second one. Once you have finished your first seam and you've pulled through the loop up here at the top, go ahead and twist your swatch around. And you'll want to go ahead and do your slip knot and create a few more chains. Put those on your crochet hook with your waste yarn. And then you'll want to come down here to the bottom of your swatch on the bind off edge and attach your chains with a slip stitch just like before. Alright, and now this time we're going to be working this column right here, the remaining half of this orange column. Right in here, if I spread this apart just a little bit, this half of the orange column, this right half of it, and we're going to be attaching it to this column, this white column right here. You will work this the same way that you did the first time. It's going to look a little bit different because the V is going in a different direction. Don't panic. It's supposed to look like that. It's okay. And what I mean when I say that the V is going in a different direction, when we were working up, we were looking at these downward shaped V's. We were crocheting into the downward shaped V's. Let's see if I can make this easier to see. These downward shaped V's right here. But now instead of these downward shaped V's, we're looking at the upward shaped V's on this side when we're working this way. You see in here? Right there, we're working in those upward shaped V's. Okay, and once you've crocheted your second seam up to the cast on edge, you'll just attach it as you did the first time to the top. With a slip stitch. crochet a couple of chains. Cut the waist join. And pull it through. Alright, and now you have set your 2 crochet seams. Now you're all set to cut. So now comes the fun part. What we're going to be doing is we are going to be cutting, if we separate these 2 crocheted seams, you should see all of these ladders from cast on to bind off edge. All these ladders straight up to the top. Okay? And that's where you're going to be cutting. So, all that's left to do is to cut. And you want to make sure that you don't cut your crochet seam stitch, otherwise it'll come unraveled. Let's see if I can get a good grip on this. And one thing that I forgot to mention earlier, you want to make sure that you use a nice sticky yarn, something like a wool or an alpaca, an animal fiber. A lot of natural fibers like cotton and linen, they're a little too slick, and this technique won't work if you use a slick yarn because it'll just slip through the seam and come unraveled. Okay, last cut. And there you have it. You have 2 steeked, 1 swatch that was 1 piece, and now is steeked, 2 separate swatches. And I'll show you that this holds up. Hopefully you won't ever do this to your knitting, but it holds up real well, real strong, and stockinette is taking over, and it folds over so you can attach. Usually this is used for making a pullover cardigan into a pullover sweater into a cardigan, and it'll fold over and you can just pick up into the crocheted edge here and then knit your button band here on this one too. Hopefully you don't harass your knitting like this, but it holds up fairly well, and then you can just weave these in as you go. Thank you for stopping by. Make sure you subscribe for more tutorials later on down the road. And again, this has been Andrew Epson, and I am the guy who knits. Thank you.